Having a Gas is the podcast that chats to the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for cooking to, for dancing to, f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with Jon Corner, the Chief Digital Officer of Salford. Jon began his career by shipping off to London to become a record producer, but after becoming intrigued by the technology of music, he headed back up north to assist Manchester's redevelopment as a leading digital city. Hello there. How are you doing?
I'm all right, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yeah. Is this the Jon Corner working from home space there?
Yeah, it's completely anonymous.
Yeah, I can see. There's no windows or anything, so we've got no landmarks.
No, nothing at all. I'm in my little study. This is the only wall that is not filled with books, and so I was getting too many people saying, "Oh, you're showing off with all those books." So I've just gone onto the other wall.
Have you noticed that every MP or anyone of a similar standing who does a talk to Zoom on the news has all their books behind them?
I know. I'm the same, unfortunately. I've got so many, just over 3,000 in this room.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet we're being tantalised and not shown them. So, but what do you? Is this your? So this is your workspace during COVID. What's normally keeping you busy at the moment? Because you've normally got quite a lot on your plate, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been working on smart city initiatives. You know, prior to COVID, we were in a very strong position in terms of building a smart city alliance, unlocking MediaCity as a super connected space, but really driving 5G networks and connected devices, narrowband IoT. Really, really exciting stuff. Untethered VR, autonomous vehicles, all of that really high level, interesting tech, but also very clear social inclusion, citizen centric angle as well, which is, you know, completely at the center of the digital Salford digital strategy. During COVID, the appetite, the public sector appetite for that level of innovation, those applications, has just rocketed. So there's a whole new conversation now. Whereas before I was very much facing the tech sector and evangelizing that in the public sector, it's flipped. You know, it's actually being pulled now. So public leaders are saying, how do we manage our cities, our urban environments, our spaces? How do we support our residents to build back better, to get to work, to get to school, to, you know, return to some level of normalcy? And how do we use technology in ways that supports them and is safe? And, you know, the idea of an Internet of Things has been around for 10 years, but now really in a strange, perverse way, COVID has kind of made that bubble to the top, and there's a genuine kind of pan-UK appetite to look at that and accelerate those applications. So that's what's been occupying me. All good stuff, lots of staring at screens, lots of lengthy discussions, lots of documentation and paperwork, but a tremendous collegiate working in one direction, kind of family style sense of working together, which I'm really, really enjoying, to be honest with you, Greg. It's fantastic.
Brilliant. So there's a few things to pick up on there, but one is definitely that the coronavirus lockdown has definitely shone a bright light on the fact that we are tech and internet dependent, but now to a degree under lockdown, that the infrastructure is just creaking underneath the demand. So it's we all need to be on Wi-Fi all day, every day to have to get our work done, and it's totally doable to get the work done. But we've only just found out that we need more bandwidth, we need more space. And is that what the 5G project is all about that you've been working on?
Yeah, I just want to challenge that a little bit. I don't think that UK networks have been creaking under demand. I really don't. I think what's been exposed by the COVID crisis is that there are significant portions of our population in the UK who are simply not online or not digitally enabled. And we haven't got a plan to help them. You know, prior to COVID-19, it was, you know, can you afford it? How much can you afford? Okay, there's fibre in the street, but can you afford fibre to the premises? Can you afford, a £60 a month, multi-channel package with Sky TV? And there are, a fifth of all UK households are mobile only.
Right.
That means we've got a whole swathe of the population who are dependent upon their mobile phone, and that's their only connectivity, and it's probably a pay-as-you-go SIM. Now, that's where I think we've seen real vulnerabilities come about. And if you're not connected, it means in a lockdown like this, it means you can't shop, you can't connect, you can't talk to people, or if you do, it's going to be expensive. And suddenly all of those pressures start to come to the fore. And I think that's the bit that's been creaking, and that's the bit that we need a different kind of model to tackle. And that's kind of my big focus, really. How are we going to build a new digital inclusion project? Or we can't just go back to, once we're out of lockdown, we can't just go back to, well, the market will sort it out. Good luck. Buy your own connectivity package.
Yeah.
Hope Stephen Fry, was it Stephen Fry, the comedian, last year said, the future health of the nation will depend upon their internet connection, and he threw it away as a joke. And how true that's become. There are some amazing things. I've been as well. And certainly lots of my colleagues around the country have been talking to primary care providers and trying to get them to think of video consultation and triage over digital. And that's been quite a hard conversation, but during COVID, it suddenly just exploded. And it's now completely normal to contact your GP over video or have that total triage over some kind of digital platform. So that kind of barrier, that kind of institutional bureaucratic barrier has disappeared. So the challenge now for tech communities, how do we build on that? How do we make it more enhanced? And how do we make it more inclusive?
Yeah,
you can talk to your GP, but if you're not connected, then how are you going to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we proceed any further, because there's so much stuff to dig into here, for those, if anyone's listening who isn't familiar with you, see, I know that you wear two hats because you're chief exec of The Landing, but you're also Salford's chief digital officer. And so I wondered if you just give us a bit of background on what those two roles entail.
Okay, well, I set up The Landing in 2013 as a tech hub, and the plan back then was how do we work with Media City? How do we make Media City or support Media City to be a real ecosystem and not just this big shiny space for TV?
Yeah.
And I was really keen for to inject that sense that the notions of media, the media world, was already changing completely. Traditional broadcasters were moving over into a tapeless model around that time. So there's a lot of energy around how do we become this new kind of content industry. And it's interesting to see, the Netflixes of this world actually kind of zoom away and not ask for permission on that and have just gone straight to consumers. But already at that time, those ideas of building platforms, building new tech partnerships around content was very much where The Landing was going to play. So I set that up, and we were, within 6 months of opening, we were 100% full, and it was a fantastic, explosion of energy and activity. And that's grown and grown and grown over the years till it got to a point in 2018 where I was quite bullish about it. I'd go and give talks and say we've just contributed 90 million GVA to the local economy. We're part of the UK's Tech Nation GDP framework. We are one of the biggest tech hubs. Blah 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 blah. But when I was talking to city councils and city leaders, the message wasn't landing as comfortably, and the notion that there were parts of our society, parts of our communities that weren't affected or interested or even benefiting in any way from this, explosion of new technology and this growth in opportunity. And that kind of started to trouble me. And I started to think, well, what is The Landing and Media City contributing in terms of social equality, social inclusion, opportunities for disadvantaged groups? How are we connecting with schools? And that became my focus. I started really then to work with schools in different ways. And really, from that, I was an opportunity came to apply for the CDO role for the city, and I did. It was a lengthy process, but that social inclusion piece and being able to turn tech in a new way to bring people into those opportunities, that was very much the centre of it, and I was delighted to be appointed. It then made sense for the landing to be subsumed into that portfolio. So I do see I'm on a kind of trajectory, and COVID's kind of paused that a little bit, where I'll be letting go of the landing and concentrating 100% on the CDO role, because the landing's, we've got an amazing team, and kind of it can run in whole new ways. And much as I enjoy running the landing and being part of it, I can see myself slowly letting go over the coming months, and maybe within a year's time, I'll be just hopefully concentrating 100% on, to me, what is the real challenge, which is next generation networks, and how do we do pan-city policy.
Right. Yeah. So with the there's a point that keeps coming back, which is the social inclusion point of the digital vision for Salford, and I think that's where I sense the let's say the traditional northerner in you, trying to generate opportunities. Because are you concerned that we're moving into a very tech dependent world and an increasingly complex one, and is there a concern that the distribution of success will steepen so that it's harder to get in at the bottom?
I don't think there's a bottom or a top. I think that hierarchical sense of it it doesn't work for me. To answer it in more simply, I think if you want to work in tech, you can be an entrepreneur. You can, at a very young age, say to yourself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to skill myself up. The same way that, maybe 20 odd years ago, young people were saying, I want to be in a band. I want to be a musician. It's bloody hard work, quite frankly. You've got to do some hard yards. You don't just pick up a saxophone and go, oh yeah, you just blow down this end and wiggle your fingers. I've got it. So you've got to actually do some work. And what preoccupies me is, are we giving that aspiration to young people so they can see, oh God, I can actually do that. That's only 3 clicks for me to get to that place. That message really is not necessarily permeating the school system. The school system is very much, how do we get young people, how do we safeguard them when they're in the building? How do we make sure they're looked after? How do we get them through a process? And how do they get a qualification at the end, which is going to get them a job? But, what does that mean really in the digital world? Because you don't necessarily have a job, you have a series of career opportunities where you are developing your skills in the digital world. And we need to think of it in a different way. And Salford has produced its own digital talent pipeline. So you will see over the next year, us start to actually initiate those aspirational programs for young people and expose the ways that they can start to get into industries and how that actually works. If you look at the telco industry, for example, only 9% of telco engineers are female. And the reason for that was, traditionally, if you wanted to be a telco engineer, it was dirty, it was messy, it was heavy lifting. You had to climb poles, you had to be able to dig, you had to lift massive drums of copper wire. All of that's gone. Now you need to understand fiber, you need to understand exchange, you need to understand network. Anyone can do it with the right training. It's not a gender specific role, and that gender neutrality opens a whole new playing field. And there's not enough young women, and I've got 2 daughters of my own, there's not enough young women who can see those opportunities and say, well, I can be a leader. I can lead in the field. I can be skilled in that field. I can lead in that. That's what gets me out of bed every morning. That's what's exciting about the CDO role, is that you can really get hold of those things and start to evangelize those in schools and through our school system.
So what are the things that...
I'm talking at you at 90 miles an hour then.
It's okay. It's what we need, because this is presumably the nuts and bolts of the job. And so one thing I want to know from you is... 2 angles on the Media City thing, because obviously that's where I work, so I've got a vested interest.
Did you look at me then? Did you go?
Apologies, I should have given you the piece or the Winston Churchill victory, depending on your outlook. Media City. two angles I want to explore. One, what's the long-term vision in your mind for it? Is it going to be like another Silicon Valley, but for the UK? And with the discussion about opportunities across the board for younger people, what are those entry points for young people? What should they be looking for to get into the tech industry at Media City?
Okay, they're two different things. Is Media City going to be another Silicon Valley? No. And the idea of another Silicon Valley is mad, really, you know, because Silicon Valley was of its day. You know, Silicon Valley has grown up in the, you know, the Steve Jobs era. Those kind of massive focus on scalable tech for the new internet age. There's not. Why would you want to do that again? It doesn't make any sense. But what Media City has the potential to be is an exemplar for what our urban environments may look like, what a future city may look like in terms of how it manages data, how it manages energy, how it keeps itself clean, how it's efficient. Why can't we use that space? And it is a city. It's a city that has a central building management system. It's a city that generates its own electricity. It's a city that manages its own cooling. It's an absolutely amazingly unique space with 20 million meters of fiber point to point everywhere, super connected, DAS and platinum rated network architecture. And on top of that, 5G network. So you have a miniature city that could be a UK exemplar for how we start to modify, change, support our legacy urban environments to become smart, to become safer, to become cleaner. I think that's a great direction of travel for Media City, as well as being, you know, why not? Why can't it be continue to be an amazing content and creative space as well for creative industries? Those two things are not mutually exclusive. And the second question was how do young people get in? And I think the landing is the doorway for that. And, you know, the clue is in the name. You know, it's a landing point. It's the start of your journey. And that's the Scouser in me coming out, you know, because, you know, Liverpool was the landing stage for the rest of the world. And we need that landing point in Media City for people's new journeys. You know, how can young people, first of all, come here and feel the space and feel inspired by it? And I see that with young people. We have groups coming in regularly into the landing. You know, some of those kids have had challenging backgrounds. Some of them are, you know, have been excluded as well. And they come in and they're just amazing. They think, okay, this is quite serious. I could be part of this, you know. And suddenly, their own self-esteem and their own vision of themselves as being part of something starts to take hold. And that's the way we can do it, really. And it's also colliding them with young entrepreneurs like yourself, you know, who are only just, you know, a few years on from them, to say, look at that guy over there, look at that, you know, that woman over there, she started her own company. We've got some amazing female tech entrepreneurs in the building who themselves are role models. So it's the seeing is believing piece. And the landing, I think, will be a real hub, if you like, a kind of hot space for that collision of opportunity for young people. And I'm determined to make that the case really over as soon as we get out of lockdown.
Yeah, of course. Which, well, you know, that could be next week, considering how much attention the government is keen to divert away from their, particular scandal at the moment. But
oh yeah, gee whiz, that's yeah, what a load of nonsense that is. One rule for one.
One rule for one.
Anyway, let's not be political.
No, I'm keen to avoid that. So one thing I was interested in is, because I'll let you know a secret here, the way we're having this conversation, despite the fact that I live in the city centre of Manchester, is not over Wi-Fi, because in my view, the Wi-Fi is not reliable enough to support this kind of thing here, because we don't have fibre where we are. So we're stuck sort of just below 1 megabyte a second for data exchange. What I've done is I've tethered to my Vodafone-enabled smartphone, who have given me the very generous 60 gigabyte data package on Voxy. Point being, I know you're involved with Vodafone and the 5G project, and so I wanted just if you could tell us a little bit about what the plan is, what the partnership entails, and where it's going.
So it's interesting that you've tethered your your computer. I went to a community centre last summer in Salford, and they were running a skills session for homeless people who are coming to this centre, being fed, and then being supported on doing simple things like just registering for health at a GP, or beginning to think about how do they start to get back into employment, and how do they connect with the digital world. And fantastic session, but I couldn't see any APs around the building. I couldn't see how they were connecting it all. And the young lad who was running the session with 10 clients in this session, he was tethering everything off his mobile phone, because there was no connectivity in the shelter, and I mean, that's it goes back to what we said right at the beginning. It is about inclusion, and it is about making sure there are no not spots. But let me talk about Vodafone. Vodafone, I've partnered with Vodafone to build a 5G innovation centre. So 5G, we all know that 5G is going to make is going to bring in a new generation of mobile phones, and it's also going to mean that we can download content and work with content in new ways. But the real market for 5G, and the real revolution, if you like, is that it will be a network of networks. It will connect physical assets in new ways. It means that we can do that massive IoT piece, machine-to-machine connectivity, in a way that's reliable and with very low latency. And to me, that's the real opportunity, and that's the nature of our partnership with Vodafone, to actually use our innovation centre in Media City to test that connectivity, that IoT connectivity, to connect devices, physical spaces, to measure people flow, air quality, to do untethered VR in Media City, to be able to see how mobile edge compute actually does work, to be able to look at how 5G networks link in with legacy LTE networks and 4G, and how you move seamlessly from a 5G to a Wi-Fi. So all of those interconnected networks are going to be part and parcel of every urban centre within 2 or 3 years. But Media City has it now, so it's an opportunity for us to test and to question and to explore innovation, and to get new companies coming through with new products who can start to really innovate around the next generation networks. So that's the nature of the partnership with Vodafone. Amazing company, and tremendous kind of collegiate support for young entrepreneurs and new IP coming through. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm keen to see where it goes at the level of the consumer. And I don't know if this is because obviously I'm quite poorly educated on how digital networks and infrastructure works, and I think I'm not alone in that. I think Carl Sagan said we live in a world supported by science and technology where almost no one understands science and technology. So I really don't know how the internet comes through the floor and then into my Wi-Fi box. But my suspicion is that that's is going to be seen as an inefficient way to get people connected in the future. Do you think it's all going to come through the air, so to speak, or do you think that's going to continue and be upgraded and refreshed?
Oh, bloody hell, Greg, that's a complicated, abstract question. Let me cut through it. Networks have got two things, and those two things have been around for 100 years, and that's cable and wireless. Those two things are still here.
Yeah.
And 5G networks will still have those two things. So you can't have a 5G network without fibre. At some point, you've got to be able to backhaul it, and fibre is going to be around for at least another 100 years. And we haven't yet unlocked the potentials of fibre. The amount of data that you can actually push down a fibre connection is phenomenal. And at the moment, that's only constrained by what's at either end of that network. How are we actually managing those switches and those connections? And it's those bits at the edges of the network that will start to really ramp up over the next few years. So we will see a situation where we will start to take for granted a very fluid connectivity, a pervasive connectivity wherever we are. But then how much data do you really want? If I was to give you, you can get, and we've done tests in Media City, of almost a gigabit download to your mobile phone.
Wow.
And what would you actually do with that? And these are the difficult business questions, really, because how fast do you want? How much do you want? What is what's the business case around that? You're going to pay for all of that data, and if you can do that, what kind of phone have you got that's going to be able to manage that data, and what cloud services do you need to keep your 27,000 photographs that you've just taken that month?
Yes.
We're heading into a world where we need different business models and different ways of structuring our relationship with telcos, and the real opportunity, the real business case is in connected networks. So autonomous vehicles, clean air management, building management, making our physical assets and our physical environment connected and safer and more efficient and more productive. I think that's the real opportunity. I think we'll get to a point where we go, yeah, it's fast enough now, that'll do.
I hope so.
I can download a Netflix movie in 3 seconds. That's fine for me, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Machine to machine connectivity is down to milliseconds, and that is that's where the real opportunities will lie, in how we connect our productivity base together in new ways.
Right, yeah, because if you take the example of what we're doing right now, we're talking over Zoom, and the latency is just a remarkable human achievement. And I can't believe we don't jump for joy every day to say you and I are talking as if we're in the same room. But the fact is, the data rate has to be compressed down to 1.8 bits a second, I think it is. Or no, it's not that. I've tried to quote a stat, I don't know. But the point is, it's quite a low fidelity. Your voice doesn't sound like you're talking to me in the room, and there's a bit of blur on the vision. So do you think we're going to get to a place where this is going to seem pretty seamless?
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment we're all kind of excited because we can do a very really low level connection over Teams or Zoom or Skype or whatever platform we choose. If we decided that was going to be a broadcastable 4K image, with balanced audio, then we'd all be in deep trouble. However, if you look at things like Match of the Day, where they're all distributed, or Have I Got News for You, some of those links are certainly not going over Wi-Fi. They've got really kind of dedicated links there and proper broadcast quality pictures. So they are distributed and they are isolating, but the audience experience is at a much higher level. And I think that will start to, over the next 3-5 years, will start to be the norm. We'll be able to have that really high def connection over video, and we'll look back at these Zoom calls and think, however did we cope with those blurry images? Though I do look better in a blurry image, I must say.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've seen it, but on Zoom, there's in the preferences, you can click enhance my appearance, which I've always done.
Oh. No, the ship sailed on that one for me, I'm afraid.
There's with Zoom in particular, I spoke to Rory Sutherland at Ogilvy recently, and he was giving his view on why Zoom has just taken the market during COVID for video conferencing. And as a tech guy, why do you think that is? Because obviously we've had Skype forever, we've had Teams, Facebook, WhatsApp, everyone was already in this space, but Zoom has just cut through.
Yeah, the answer is really easy. It's the number of clicks. How many clicks do you have to how many times do you have to press your computer for it to work? And the guys and gals who built Zoom know their audience. And I've got 2 teenage kids now, and they have got the attention span down to a few seconds. So if it doesn't work straight away, it doesn't work. Yeah. And I love Teams and I love all the other packages, but you need to register, download, click, put your details in. Whereas Zoom is plug and play, click and go. So I think that's it. I don't think it's any better in terms of its interface or what it can do. And it's had a few security issues, but I honestly think it's the fluidity of it that has really given it that market edge. And there's a lesson in that for everything, really. That we if you look at the amount of focus that banks put into their online banking packages and how more sophisticated they've become and more secure, but also how instant, it used to be so long-winded, didn't it? Even 18 months ago to do your online banking, and now it's really
yeah. You have to remember your 3 passwords and then your 2 backup questions, and then
yeah. I mean, security, and all of that's good, but we've got a generation coming behind us who want everything absolutely at the button, and Zoom kind of plugged into that zeitgeist, I think.
How do you? That's one thing I'd be interested to hear your opinion on. How do you see tech solving the problem of infinite passwords? Because obviously, I get a thing saying you are using a certain set of passwords for everything, and you really, in an ideal world, need a different one for all 127 things you have an account with.
That's not going to go away, unfortunately. Yeah, right. I mean, if you're going to use a migrated password, at some point, that becomes human error, and human error is the number one problem in any security issue. We talk about hacking and getting into systems, but somewhere along the line, someone's made a mistake, and it's those little errors that very often become the gateway into systems and into platforms. I think. We could talk maybe on another call about sovereign identity, but we'll probably get to a position where your identifier is linked to you in a more coherent way.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing, very clever biometrics on our mobile phones. And on my 14-year-old, when I confiscate his phone, I can't open it because it'll only open with his eye. So it's really frustrating. I can't see it. But that will, that sounds a little bit Minority Report, but it doesn't have to be. We already accept it in the health sector that we've got, a personalized, identifier for ourselves. And there's a lot of talk about blockchain and putting those sovereign identities in some kind of blockchain. But that's probably the direction of travel, where you are your password. We're a good few years off that yet, but I can't see any. For the time being, we're going to have to live in that world of managing.
Yeah, and you don't see like thumbprinting as the solution or something like that. Like.
Yeah, ask me that question before COVID. No one wants to touch anything anymore. So,
yes, yeah.
I don't know where the touchscreen industry is going to head to. All those people go into fast food places to press their burger, and no, man.
Yeah, socially distant. You'll have a 2-meter thing to press the screen with soon.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
One thing I'm quite excited about, back to the Media City thing, is obviously that's where my office is. And one of the big hindrances for our business in terms of just getting new clients is most of the a large proportion of the industry is in London. And so what they want to know is, are you round the corner in Soho so I can get to the studio and get the session done? And so with Zoom in particular, that's something we're quite excited to do, is to be running sessions remotely, just screen sharing. And instead of having to have a long delay time between revisions, can you change this edit for me? They have to wait for the edit to be done and then critique it. We're going to be able to work on the fly with London from Media City, which is exciting.
That's brilliant. And the music industry, I think, and by the music industry, it's a wide, it's a very broad church in terms of film music and advertising and all of those other opportunities. I think that really benefits from remote working, and that's an old story in creative industries. Distributed working in the game sector and in visual effects, that's been around for a long time. So you've got whole swathes of the industry who are used to working in a remote way. And platforms have become very sophisticated at versioning as well, so that you understand exactly what version of a product you're working on and what point in that life cycle you are at. So I think there are some fantastic platforms out there for managing content. Be interesting to take some of that thinking and migrate it into another sector, such as health or productivity. Because you'll know, and I know, and I've worked on post-production for TV and film, and I know that you can have several hundred people at once all working on the same, block, as it were, and multi-layered audio, multi-layered visual effects, different versionings, instructions from the director, instructions from the VFX director, and you can waste a lot of money if the versioning is not right. So that co-created process is very much part of our industry: music, games, film, TV. I think that will continue to, and 5G will really ramp that up as well, and produce cost savings. The other side of that, though, Greg, is the human element, and that's a really tough one, isn't it? Because if you want to get a performance out of someone as a director or as a musician in the studio, then that human side of it is absolutely vital. You're not going to be able to do that, I don't think, in the same way over the Zoom call. I'm willing to be proved wrong there, but there's a sterility to it that worries me a little bit. And, you know, you'll know, and I know that great performance in the studio requires, you know, that real mentoring and interaction from the producer. And to get that performance, you know, you can't hide, can you, when you're in front of a microphone singing?
That's right.
You've got to be able to deliver. And how does the singer reach into herself or himself and say, okay, this is how I'm going to perform that song? And very often it's a mentor or a producer or somebody who's actually, you know, helping them and saying, I've got your back, there's trust here, let's work on it together. And I think that human interaction is vital as well.
Let's pick up on that for a second, because the reason you have that knowledge and that experience is because, as far as I understand, you spent some time in the music industry.
I did indeed, yeah.
So tell us about that. What were you doing? When was it?
Well, I signed as a recording artist to EMI back in the mid-'80s. And that's all I ever wanted to do, to be honest with you. I you know, from a very young kid, I just wanted to make records. Not necessarily be a pop star, but make records. The idea of holding or having, you know, a record that I'd made was kind of the goal, really. I just wanted to do that. And I remember even in primary school doing the, you know, the show and tell day where you say, what is it you're going to be when you grow up? And we say, I'm going to make records. But when I finally did get into some of these amazing studios in London, I just fell in love with the tech, really. And I remember going into Odyssey Studios and into Maida Vale and seeing these mixing desks and having that interaction with the engineers and seeing what the capabilities were. And I thought, this is what I want to do. And I became obsessive about tech, really. So I dropped the whole idea of wanting to be in a band and just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work in studios. And I did that for about 7 years. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I tell you what, I wasn't very good at, Greg. I wasn't very good at that human side. And I think that's why really I moved away from that and into post-production and video. I got attracted by another piece of tech that was slightly more, you know, structured. So I was very good at programming. And my job for a couple of years was taking, you know, the 3-minute pop song and turning it into, you know, the 18-minute dance floor piece as well. And so I was way ahead in terms of programming, and I could listen to the song and listen to all those multi-tracks and go, that's a really interesting bit. That's an interesting bit. Almost like a kind of intellectual jigsaw, you know, game of repositioning bits of music. And but I didn't see that as a direction of travel. You know, there were, you know, since then that's kind of become the norm. You know, there's some amazing artists who do just that. And but I still thought, oh, I need to be George Martin. You know, I need to be Stuart Levine. And that's the bit I was crap at, really.
Well, the bit where the producer could not just be on the desk, but they could get in the live room with the artist and then shape the performance and shape the music. Yeah,
I was so good at managing programming, text sequencing, computers, setting up multi-channels, reading 48-track digital mixes, and I loved it, and I loved the creativity around that. But I approached human beings in the same way. You know, it was like 3, 2, 1, sing. Okay, off you go. And you cannot do that, you know, to artists. You've got to, you know, that you've probably only got 3 takes in any, you know, singer.
Yes.
Or anyone who's trying to perform, and it took too long for the penny to drop for me that I was just that, you know, I was seeing them as an extension of the machines.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Rack Studios in St. John's Wood, and Stuart Levine was in the next studio, and these, you know, these expensive studios and time's money, and I'm mixing a track, and I noticed his studio was always empty. And Rack is one of the few studios that's got windows so you could see daylight, you know, the trees outside. And I'd see him walking up and down. He was making a single with Mick Hucknall, and I said to his engineer, "Why is the studio empty? Why isn't he producing?" And he said, "He is producing." I said, "But he's walking around Regent's Park." And he went, "Yeah, man, he's producing."
Yes.
And that, he was really working with his artists and talking to him about the song. And I just didn't get that. You know, I just wanted to get the tech working.
Yeah. It's there's famous stories about Rick Rubin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He founded Def Jam, and he's had huge complaints from, for example, Corey, who's the lead singer of Slipknot, saying he came to the session like 3 times and didn't touch a single like piece of the desk. What we pay him for? But people say his brilliance is that, you know, the engineer will do the desk thing, but he just, you know, if it's a singer-songwriter, one mic, one plug into the guitar, and just play like you're at the open mic, and then they get the best performance out of them.
Yeah, I get how do you do that? You know, that requires a level of empathy and connection with your artist. And I was always in too much of a hurry, really. I just kind of, you know, would say to people, "Okay, 3, 2, 1, go, do your thing." And you know, for some people that worked. I was very good at working with drummers. I really loved working with drummers, and I could spot, you know, a really talented player in, you know, 30 seconds a minute. You would know, you would get a little tingle. You go, "Okay, this is a really good drummer. You know, this is an amazing drummer." So yeah, I loved working with percussion and drummers. But my Achilles heel was getting those great performances out to singers, really, I think.
Yeah. So if you'd have been in a different timeline, if you'd have been a teenager now, let's say, you would have been on the sort of Ableton push, just programming non-stop, making like the electronic music.
Yeah, maybe. As I've grown older and wiser, and I've been successful in business, I've developed, you know, much better people skills, and working and inspiring people and helping them, and not necessarily just being completely target driven all the time. Actually thinking, well, what's the strength of this team? You know, what talent has this person really got, and are they really in the right place? How do I help them grow their career? And I really enjoy doing that, you know. And in the last 5 years, I've mentored over 100 businesses, and I love doing that. Absolutely love it. So yeah, if I could have taken that skill set I've developed slowly over the last couple of decades and transpose it into my younger self, I think I would have been a really good producer, maybe.
But that is definitely universal. It's something we all do, isn't it? We say, "Oh, if only I'd have known then what I know now." But,
yeah. I got very much seduced by video tech. I remember I was working in a studio called AdVision. I was house producer there for a short time. And they did a lot of film and video work, and I became completely fascinated by this technology, and non-linear editing around video was just in its infancy. So I really kind of got seduced by that, and I ended up moving in and setting up my own post-production company, which was really successful. And I just love the idea that you can cut things up and you can create these films and these adverts, or, you know, dramas, whatever it is, and that the post-production process is wholly creative, but it's also quite insular. You know, you can just lock yourself in and then present it like, you know, making a cake or something. Superb.
Yeah, that's something I'm excited about for the future of Media City. I'd be interested to see what you think about this, because obviously the lot, as I understand it, is going to double in size over, I think, the next 5 years. And
well, probably not that quickly, you know. I mean, it will double in size, there's no doubt about it. And there's but that kind of is almost, when you say double in size, you almost think like a Simpsons cartoon of something just going. Whereas, you know, if it's slightly more strategic than that, and there are spaces in and around Media City that will strategically start to change and develop. So there'll be a doubling of the overall footprint in terms of office space and creative space, but not necessarily that growth outwards. But, you know, the landlords do own most of the land around us, so you know, Media City's not landlocked, but that's more of a 50-year vision.
Got you.
Rather than a 5-year vision.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as it escaped my lips, I noticed that it's taken about 5 years to build a couple of the buildings across the road. But I can see how it's basically, you know, there's a long-term vision for the project. But in terms of the kind of businesses, maybe not naming names, but is there kind of a talent that you'd like to see attracted to Media City? I know that we've had some good companies come up from London and move their headquarters to Salford. Are we looking for more of that?
Well, you've got to contextualize Media City inside Greater Manchester. Greater Manchester's on a journey. You know, it will be a world innovation city. You know, it's climbing those league tables, and the type of talent that we need is that creativity around new technologies and the applications of new technologies. So it's not just coders, but it's people who can actually envisage new applications and be able to make those developments, those applications work. So it is a technical skill, it is a programming skill, but it's also a creative and entrepreneurial skill as well. And I don't see Media City as any different from the rest of GM in that sense. Everybody's on that journey. And what Media City does have is the playground, the physical assets for those entrepreneurs, those creative people, those people with new IP or new ways of doing DevOps, those new ways of linking cloud technologies to physical applications on the ground. Those specialists will have a playground, and Media City could be the most amazing tech playground for actually quickly deploying or failing fast your product, rather than looking for a pilot or a test bed somewhere, which is kind of a slow process in any other environment. Media City is kind of plug and play. So I do see that that's the way things will go.
That's definitely a new angle that I've learned through this conversation in particular. I've never considered Media City as, well, like you said, a tech playground and somewhere you can test the city of the future.
You can indeed. So for instance, you know, since COVID, the UK legislation around e-scooters is now being reevaluated because they're clean. But at the moment, they are... you know, there's no legislation that would allow you to take an e-scooter out and about in our cities. You do see it if you go around Europe, you see it in the States. But Media City is a private city, so you can simply do e-scooters immediately, and they could talk to the network, so the network could actually constantly manage where you're leaving your scooter and if anyone else could pick it up. So I do see that kind of application. Media City is ready instantly. You could just deploy tomorrow if you wanted to. So the fantastic capacity in Media City to be that instant deployment space, that living lab. A living lab really is, rather than playground, a living lab for new technologies or for the application of new technologies.
That's a great bit of copy. There's one more thing I'll pick your brains on before we wrap up, because obviously we're in coronavirus year. When this gets released, this could be a few weeks away, and everything could have changed. But it's cast a light on the need for health tech and developments and innovations there. So, is there anything in it, you know, any nutshells that you can see that's something we need, or this is something we are working on, or something we could develop as a result of this coronavirus crisis?
Well, again, Manchester's leading the way, really. You know, Manchester's doing amazing work on patient records and data management, and being able to fix the plumbing around data. You know, if you've got multiple hospitals, multiple GP surgeries, you've got multiple data points that aren't always joined together, and Manchester has actually coalesced all of those. So you can actually, from birth onwards, you can start to manage the health of people and their records and their interactions with the health service in a more conjoined way. So the data management is a big piece, and connected to that is being able to do longitudinal studies around health conditions and to be able to target your resources in a very specific way. I think the opportunities post-COVID will be on real-time data, and that's the intellectual shift, if you like, because if you look at the health sector, it's very often about R&D data silos where you can get really, really clear clinical records of a patient's journey from A to Z, and you can start to innovate new drugs, new technologies, new processes and practices around specific illnesses. And that's all fantastic stuff. What that doesn't do is tell you if somebody's just fallen over, or somebody's just had a seizure right now, or somebody's not drinking water, or somebody's not taking their tablets. All of that real-time stuff, there's no way of managing that. And now I think that's going to be the new direction of travel. How do we extend that care into our communities in a distributed way, in a digital way, so that we can actually connect with people around their long-term illnesses, managing their own personal health in new ways before they rock up at A&E or hospital or become a very expensive clinical case in our hospitals. Very often we've got great data at the point where somebody's in trouble. How do we actually get upstream on it is going to be, I think, the real focus. And that's the area I'm particularly interested in working. And we've run, health tech accelerators in Media City, very much focused on that citizen tech, citizen safety, and the future of health, the future of distributed health. I think that's going to be the huge opportunity for the UK.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing the progress, seeing how it goes. And this has been enlightening. So thanks for your time, and hopefully we can do it again when there's some post-COVID updates.
Brilliant.
Cheers, Jon.
Thanks, Greg. Take care.
Bye.